Back. This is Mike Vitagliano. This is episode 4 of the Startup Evangelist Investor First Impressions. In this episode, I want to talk about a series of intangibles that, again, every investor as an individual will measure and make their decisions on a personal basis. But it is, again, truly important for the co-founders, for the presenters to understand and not fall into a trap by not presenting themselves in the best light or not having an answer. Excuse me, not having an answer to a difficult question posed by the investors. So let's jump into the PowerPoint and see what we have for this particular episode. All right, there's no way around this. Investors prefer repeat founders, not first time founders. It's just a fact of life. That doesn't mean that they won't talk to first time founders. I was a first time founder. I was an unprepared first time founder. I made it through and had a successful liquidity event. So it can be done. But just recognize that they prefer repeat founders because a lot of the things that I've talked about in episodes, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are already understood by repeat founders. So with that said, it's now behind us. Let's move forward and recognize that there are some things that have to be overcome. The first thing they're going to look for is whether the co-founders have a significant industry reputation and/or accomplishments. Again, I did not. My co-founder had built a very significant and technical product, and we had a great deal of expertise in the solution area that we were building. And so I played on that when we were speaking to the investors. It can be overcome. Just recognize that they're going to look at the lead founder and be asking themselves, "What have you done? What have you done in this market?" And again, they're going to measure every statement that you make for management maturity or immaturity. Why can they trust you with their money? Why should they trust you with their money? And are you going to be able to deliver on a global venture that, as we said before, they're looking for an IPO? Why are you that person who can lead this particular venture? They're going to be looking at this concept of product market fit. Now we've just glossed over this, or I've mentioned it a couple of different times, and trust me, there will be multiple videos on the concept of product market fit. But what they're going to be looking at is within your pitch deck, do you convey a mature, viable strategy to achieve product market fit? You just can't make statements that say we're going to do this, or the market participants are going to look at this product and they're going to recognize it's so substantial and significant they're just going to want to buy it. They're going to want to know what the plan is to achieve product market fit, and you have to convey that to them. One of the best ways to convey management maturity is to be able to represent the steps that you've taken as a co-founder to reduce investor risk. It should not be anticipated by the co-founders that the venture capitalists are there to take all of the risk. It's got to be a shared risk profile. The next bullet addresses that, have the co-founders presented a clean sheet of paper. And what I mean by that is, a PowerPoint presentation and said, this is what we want to do. This is why we want to do it. This is why we're the team to do it. And oh, by the way, we need several $1 million to accomplish this. Or have the co-founders developed a prototype. or a pilot demonstration, use their own time, use their own resources, raised an earlier round of funding to be able to accomplish that, taken on a financial co-founder so that they could build something and show the investor that their true commitment to this project um, is an admirable one, and they should be considered as a partner for the for the investor to put their money into. Um, one of the We talked about market validation in an earlier slide. And so the one of the questions the co-founders have to be able to address is there any documented customer traction to this idea? You can't just say, I've talked to three people who are in the marketplace today who would be candidates for this solution, and they've thought it's really interesting. You either have to, have that individual go on record with a letter saying something like, I've discussed this problem with co-founder number one and co-founder number two. They presented a very interesting solution. If they're able to, achieve the development of this solution, this is something that we would absolutely consider a must-have within our enterprise. It's a very different scenario than just saying we've talked to, people in the industry, we've been on a Reddit board and posted a couple questions, and the answers we've received have been positive. Um, you have to persuade and sell the investor that as co-founders, you can execute this vision. As I've said in an earlier PowerPoint, you can't be make blustering statements that this is the greatest solution. It's going to change the world. You have to show them that you have a plan and that you're capable. You have the right business experience, the right technical experience, that you'll be able to execute on this vision and be able to bring the company to the next step, which is most likely a more substantial investment round to expand into the marketplace. You should expect that the investor is going to challenge you and say, why are you the right team? And why is this the right time to solve this problem? You need to have an answer to questions along that line of interrogation. And interrogation is what it's going to be. They're putting up their money, either their own personal money if they're a family office, or their investors' money who've invested in their venture capital fund, and they have a set of policies and procedures before they make that investment, and so they have to be convinced that you're the right team and this is the right time to solve their problem, or solve the problem that you're proposing. They have to be able to trust you. And again, a very intangible attribute, trust. You have to show them that you're going to be, and I did this by my uses of capital when I presented my expense sheet or my expense plan for what I was going to do with my seed investment. I show them that my furniture requirements were, not high end. I show them I was putting a great deal of money into solutions for the technical team, and everybody else was, going to get average computers, not high end computers. Um, Little things like that can, present the investor that you are going to be diligent and protect their funds as you build out this solution in the company. I mentioned earlier in episode 3, is the deal structured for both the co-founders and the investors to win? Or are you asking the investor to take all of the financial risk and the co-founders have zero financial risk. And is the investor's reputation at risk? I've got a good example. It's not about a startup venture, but it goes back to a company that I was working for in the 70s. Um, those of you who are my age or may have heard of the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island that happened in 1979. And at the time, I was working for Digital Equipment Corporation, and Digital made a lot of computers that were what was called an OEM market, original equipment manufacturer, and that either other hardware manufacturers or software manufacturers would bundle their solutions with Digital's computer and then sell the package. And once this nuclear accident occurred at 3 Mile Island, Digital convened their internal operations committee and made the statement that, while they had nothing to do with, while there was no digital equipment computers responsible for the 3 Mile Island accident, Digital would not work with any partner that wanted to use the digital equipment computer technology with anything to do with controlling a nuclear power plant. So investor reputation is a very significant issue for venture capitalists. That's all they have is their reputation. And if that gets ruined in the marketplace by a bad partnership with you, then that has ramifications that they are just not going to want to take. So this is the end of episode 4 and the initial concepts and overview of how investors look at founding teams. The next 6 or 7 episodes are going to be geared more towards the founding team, how to come up with a solution that is viable in the marketplace and avoid solutions that are not. How the personality of co-founders, what's the best approach to take in that regard, and things of that nature. So appreciate the time and look forward to seeing you again on episode 5.